Illegal cars, a mid-season rule change, and a direct threat from the FIA. Either adapt, or you're out of the Japanese GP. Sounds like an exaggeration. Well, that's exactly what's unfolding behind the most intense scenes of Formula One in 2025. While fans enjoy overtakes and on-track battles, a much more dangerous game is playing out behind the garages, and very few truly understand what's at stake. The FIA uncovered that several teams were exploiting loopholes in the regulations by using flexible wings, gaining performance where they shouldn't. The result? A harsh warning was issued, new rules were enforced, and now some cars could be banned from upcoming races if they keep pushing the limits. Red Bull's complaint. When Red Bull raises a finger to complain, you better pay attention. The Milton Keynes team alerted the FIA about the ongoing use of flexible wings by several teams, something that, in the eyes of the reigning world champions, clearly crosses the line of the technical regulations. This wasn't just a post-race tantrum, it was a direct challenge to the integrity of the sport. And sure enough, shortly after, the FIA tightened its flex tests. Coincidence? In Formula One, it almost never is. Red Bull's move wasn't just technical, it was deeply strategic. In a season where the field is tighter than ever and wins are decided by the tiniest margins, any questionable advantage must be exposed. McLaren, Ferrari, and even Mercedes are charging hard, and Red Bull knows that letting this slide could crush Verstappen's shot at a fifth world title. Alerting the FIA was a way to protect their team while turning the heat up on their rivals. That complaint set off alarm bells across the entire paddock. So loud, in fact, that not only did the FIA respond, but multiple teams quietly began reassessing their aerodynamic setups. The atmosphere turned tense, like when someone reports a noisy neighbor. You might not know who the target was, but you do know the inspectors are on their way. And from there, the real chess match of Formula One begins. As soon as the FIA tightened its flex test protocols, the spotlight immediately turned to a very specific group: McLaren, Ferrari, Haas, and Alpine. This wasn't a random pick, there were solid signs. Behind the scenes, FIA engineers had already been monitoring suspicious behavior in the data and onboard footage from these teams. Alpine was the first to publicly admit it had to make adjustments. But McLaren became the FIA's main case study. The atmosphere inside McLaren's garage is one of extreme tension. According to internal sources, the team was at the very edge of the limit, and that's not just a figure of speech. The rear wing's flexibility was so close to the allowed threshold that many saw it as a hidden infringement. It's that classic saying, if it's not illegal, it's at least immoral. And with the new, stricter tolerance being enforced in Japan, things are about to get even trickier for the Woking squad. Ferrari and Haas are also under close watch. In Ferrari's case, onboard sensors detected slight oscillations suggesting excessive wing flex in high-speed corners, something that might explain their inconsistent performance in recent races. Haas, meanwhile, has been pushing hard for precious points, and may have stretched the rules a bit too far chasing aerodynamic gains. The big question now is, who will still have the pace once these mandatory adjustments kick in? McLaren on the edge of FIA regulations. McLaren has officially landed on the FIA's radar, and not for the right reasons. During recent tests, the papaya orange car's rear wing showed more flex than expected, hitting the technical limit of 0.75 mm allowed under current rules. FIA's own technical director, Nicholas Tombatsis, made it crystal clear. This margin will be unacceptable at the Japanese GP, where the new threshold drops to 0.5 mm. In other words, if McLaren doesn't act, they could find themselves on the wrong side of legality. What's curious is that McLaren isn't typically known for dancing in the gray areas of the rulebook, at least not often. But in the relentless pursuit of performance, it seems the Woking squad has taken a bolder approach than usual. The pressure to deliver results, combined with the rise of their rivals, has created a scenario where every tenth of a second counts, no matter the cost. And this time, that cost might be higher than anyone anticipated. Now the real challenge begins, staying competitive with a stiffer, more regulation-compliant rear wing. The risk of losing aerodynamic balance and straight-line efficiency is very real. McLaren's strength this season has been its stability and top speed on fast circuits like Suzuka and Silverstone. But if the adjustments aren't perfectly dialed in, the team could suffer a noticeable drop in performance. And in Formula One, even half a second can bury your weekend. Technical impact and performance loss. With the FIA's pressure mounting, some teams didn't want to take any chances and made quiet adjustments even before the crackdown began. And the effects showed on track. During the Chinese GP, for example, there was a noticeable drop in top speed for several cars. What looked like a minor dip in performance was, in reality, the side effect of rushed tweaks made to avoid penalties. And when you tamper with aerodynamics, the entire car feels it. McLaren stood out the most during this transition. After modifying its rear wing, the car lost efficiency on long straights, the very area where it had been shining. Small details like this, often missed by the casual fan, make a huge difference in the fight for positions. But McLaren wasn't alone. Rumors suggest at least 4 or 5 teams changed their aero setups to stay ahead of the FIA's new scrutiny. This drop in performance doesn't just affect raw pace, it changes the car's entire behavior. A clear example was Leclerc's race, where he struggled with instability and tire management, directly tied to a loss of around 30 points of downforce. In a sport where every tweak impacts grip, tire temperature, and wear over the laps, any reduction in aero load triggers a domino effect. It's a reminder that the technical battles behind the scenes can be just as brutal as those on track. 30 points of downforce lost crippled Leclerc's performance. At the Chinese GP, Leclerc's performance was the direct result of 2 combined factors, a loss of downforce and physical damage to the car. Right off the start, he clipped the back of Hamilton's car and damaged his front wing, enough to throw off the aerodynamic balance and compromise his pace. But the bigger issue came earlier. Ferrari had already made emergency adjustments to the rear wing to comply with the FIA's new regulations. That alone cost them around 30 points of downforce. The SF-25, which had been showing good overall balance, took a double hit. On one end, the rear became looser due to the reduced aero load. On the other, the front lost precision because of the damaged wing. Leclerc was caught between a rock and a hard place, unable to push through corners and struggling with medium tire degradation, especially during the first stint. Ferrari tried to adapt with a revised strategy, but the pace never really came back. More than lap times, what stood out was the lack of confidence. Leclerc, known for dancing on the edge, had to switch to a more conservative driving style, trying to make up with finesse what the car lacked in stability. And when a driver has to adjust this much on race day, it's a clear sign the car isn't delivering. The big question now is, how many tenths will Ferrari keep losing before they find a new balance under the FIA's latest changes? Promising but inconsistent. Ferrari. Ferrari entered 2025 with the most high-profile duo in modern Formula One, Leclerc and Hamilton. And the start of the season looked promising. In Melbourne, Leclerc topped the second practice session with authority, giving the impression that the SF-25 was finally ready to take the fight to the Bulls and the Papayas. Then in Shanghai, it was Lewis who stole the spotlight, pole on Friday and a dominant sprint win, a performance that reignited the Tifosi's hopes. But then came Sunday, and the old shadow returned over Maranello. In the main race at the Chinese GP, the team was hit by a technical storm. Leclerc damaged his front wing at the start after tapping Hamilton, which threw off his driving rhythm. Hamilton, meanwhile, struggled with instability and excessive tire wear, a direct result of the mandatory rear wing changes made to meet the FIA's new flex limits. And to top it all off, came the knockout blow. Both cars were disqualified post-race due to technical irregularities. A brutal gut punch after a weekend that had started with so much promise. This is Ferrari's dilemma, a fast, potentially race-winning car that remains inconsistent and fragile under pressure. When everything clicks, like Hamilton's sprint win, the team looks unstoppable. But all it takes is a regulation change, a bump at the start, or a setup misstep, and it all comes crashing down. The question echoing through the paddock now is, can Ferrari find consistency in 2025? Or will they remain the team that dazzles on Friday, only to stumble when it really counts? Future changes to the front wing. If the rear wing controversy already shook up the grid, what's coming next promises even more turbulence. The FIA is preparing to implement new flex test protocols for front wings, with a planned debut at the Spanish GP. This section of the car, crucial for managing airflow and setting cornering balance, is about to become the next battleground in F1's aero war. The goal is clear: crack down on designs that bend without showing, giving hidden advantages under braking and quick direction changes. Several teams are already moving behind the scenes. Front wings that subtly deform at high speed are almost impossible to catch with the naked eye, but they have a huge effect on car behavior. McLaren, for instance, is rumored to have developed a setup that changes its angle of attack under pressure, boosting straight-line speed without hurting corner entry. With the FIA's new protocol, that kind of system is at serious risk of being outlawed, and that could shake up the entire pecking order. The big question in the paddock now is, who stands to lose the most under this new rule? Teams like Mercedes and Ferrari, still trying to claw their way back to the top, could benefit if the most creative solutions get axed. But if the FIA tightens the leash too much, there's a risk of stifling innovation and making technical development more rigid. Either way, the Spanish GP could become the turning point of the season, where the scales of performance might tip in unexpected ways, triggering more chaos in the title fight. What's happening behind the scenes in Formula One in 2025 is way more than a battle over lap times. We're witnessing, in real time, the rulebook being rewritten mid-game. And those who don't adapt will be left behind, or worse, off the grid entirely. The FIA is tightening its grip, and for the first time in years, there's a real threat of mass disqualifications if teams keep flirting with illegality. But now I want your take. Is this true sporting justice or just regulatory overreach? Did Red Bull act out of ethics or to sabotage the competition? And can Ferrari and McLaren really keep up without their flexible tricks? I seriously want to hear what you think. Drop a comment below and tell me which team you believe is hiding more than they should. And if you're into deep analysis like this, with behind-the-scenes drama, real tech breakdowns, and the kind of insight you'll never hear on race broadcasts, subscribe to the Race Suit channel, hit that notification bell, and come along for the ride. Because Formula One isn't just about racing. It's about understanding the game that plays out when the cameras aren't rolling.